Good morning, Eagle Brook, and greetings from hot and humid Okinawa, Japan. Coming at you from a small island in between the Pacific and the East China Sea. Not watching live with you all right now since that's 2 a.m. my local time, but I do hope that this finds you doing well and staying healthy. I'm sometimes able to catch the Wednesday live check-in while I'm having my Thursday morning coffee, and it's been really fun to kind of track what's going on in the church and to feel just part of that community from across the ocean. And so thanks for having me this morning. For those that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Beth Mabry, and I'm one of Eagle Brook's missionaries. I serve with Cadence International, a mission agency that supports the military community around the world. I've been with Cadence for the past 10 years, and I'm so thankful for Eagle Brook's partnership during this past decade. You bring me great encouragement, and as you give and pray for our ministry here, God really is at work, and so thank you. I'm really glad to be part of the Eagle Brook family. I was hoping to get to be with you live this morning. The original plan was to spend some time in the States this summer. I had a few conferences to attend and just some different travels involved in this summer. But as you know, COVID has put a damper on nearly everybody's plans for this summer. And so I do hope potentially next summer to get to visit instead. And so here we are. I'm not the most tech-savvy person, so bear with me as I step out of my comfort zone a little bit to bring you a virtual update. I think if there's one thing this COVID season has revealed, it's that there is a need to be flexible, try new things, try doing things differently. I'm sure we've all had long lists of plans that have been altered and adjusted several times and kind of retried doing different things. So here we are. So I thought for an update, when Steve and Arnie had reached out and asked if I'd be interested in coming at you virtually, I decided that thought I'd share some pre-COVID highlights of ministry so you can see what God's doing through your giving and prayers here, and then move into a time of sharing about life during this crazy season, things that the Lord's been revealing and stirring in my heart in hopes that it would encourage you. So it's been 2 years since I've seen you all in person. The last time I visited you, I was still living in Yokosuka, Japan, and that's a Navy community just south of Tokyo on Japan's mainland. Shortly after I returned to Japan in 2018, my leadership asked if I would relocate to a different ministry within Japan, but on a different island. For a number of reasons, they had asked that, and so I said yes to that move. So in the fall of 2018, I closed out my time in Yokosuka, and I moved down to Okinawa. It's a small island in the East China Sea. It's actually closer to Taiwan than it is to Tokyo. Moving from Yokosuka to Okinawa, kind of like moving from downtown New York City to a small Hawaiian island. So it's very different. Okinawa is small. It's less than 70 miles long. So you think maybe like the Minako area to Wausau, and it ranges from 5 to 10 miles wide depending on where you're at on the island. And it is home to roughly 1.3 million Okinawan people, Japanese people, and about 100,000 Americans. I find it challenging to describe Okinawa because it's such a unique place and mission. The Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, the Army are all represented on this island. The Air Force and the Marines have the largest presence, and this is the largest concentration of Marines outside of the continental United States. A little backdrop, I'm kind of a history nerd, so wanted to share a little bit about Okinawa if you don't know much about it. During World War II, the Battle of Okinawa was one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific Theater. Over 200,000 people lost their lives in the battle, and that includes American troops, Japanese soldiers, Okinawan civilians caught in the crossfires. If you haven't seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge, it's a great movie. It's a war movie, so it's a little gory, but it's about the Battle of Okinawa and one of the first conscientious objectors in the war. So great movie to check out during these quarantine days if you're looking for something to watch, if your playlist is running short. But as a part of the surrender agreement between Japan and America after the war, America continued to control Okinawa until 1972, when it was eventually given back to Japan. Okinawa was able to serve as a key place following World War II, like during the Korean War. We were able to have a lot of planes and stuff here, and even today, it continues to be just a major military hotspot for us. When you think about our neighbors in this neighborhood or in this region of the world, like I said, we're not far from China, we're not far from Korea, we're not far from Russia, and so it definitely is a major presence for us. Lots of stuff going on. It's a very strategic location. So there's constantly jets flying around. It's a high-tempo base. There's all kinds of aircraft. It's not uncommon to have to pause a conversation because noisy jets are flying overhead. And so there's always something going on here. Prior to the war, Okinawa was considered part of Japan, but it still had its own unique culture and identity. They even had their own language called Hogan. However, during the Japanese Imperial Army's occupation during the war, and then in the years following when the U.S. was controlling it, it became a unique blend of traditional Okinawan with its Japanese and American influences. So even though it's still a part of Japan today, it's very different from mainland Japan. It has much more of a laid-back island feel. I've never been to Hawaii, but people tell me it's similar. They have different religious practices here than mainland Japan because of just different influences over the years, different Chinese influences over the years and different things. And so the temples look different here than they were in mainland Japan. It has its own special foods. Like mainland, we have awesome sushi, some of the best in the world, in my opinion. Great ramen, but Okinawa puts its own spin on a few dishes. That's really fun, and so definitely a unique experience. If Japan's ever on your bucket list, be sure to hop down to Okinawa. It's about a 2.5 hour flight from Tokyo. So that's probably enough history and geography lessons for you. You're probably wondering, what do I actually do here? What does ministry look like? Why is Cadence operating here? As I shared earlier, Cadence supports and ministers to the military community all around the world. We've got locations in Europe. I served in Germany for 5 years before heading over to Asia. We've got folks that work, in Spain and England and Italy. We also have some locations all across the United States, different military communities. We've got folks up in Korea, folks in mainland Japan, down here in Okinawa. So really, we serve all over the world, working with the American military population. Typically, we partner with military chaplains, and we like to be involved in chapel life. We don't just come in and plant a church off base outside the gates. We really do like to work from within. And so the partnerships will look different at every location around the world, just based on local needs. Here I actually run a youth group right on base. It's a program that we call the Protestant Youth of the Chapel, or the PYOC. We like acronyms in the military. And so the PYOC is a community youth group. And we draw students that attend one of the base chapel services where I go. So when I'm sitting in chapel on a Sunday morning and I see students, I'll say, hey, come and join our youth group. We draw students that maybe attend a church off base with their family for whatever reason. And maybe those churches off base, many don't have a full-time youth worker. And so they're looking to plug their student into some kind of a youth community. And so they'll come to our program. And we also have a number of students who don't go to chapel anywhere with their families or by themselves. And they like what we do, and they like to spend time with us. And so they'll come to some of our programs throughout the week. So really a wide range of students that are very well churched with their families, being discipled by their families that come to our program. And then we have students that really have never sat through a church service that choose to come to our youth program. And so it's fun. It's an exciting place, wide range of things going on. In terms of how many students are on this little island, like I said, there's a large military presence here. There are 13 Department of Defense schools on this island. 13, that's a lot. And so that includes 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, and then 8 elementary schools. My primary focus here is I work on the Kadena Air Base, which is the largest base, population and size-wise, we have on the island. We have 1 high school and 2 middle schools on this base. And if I'm doing my math right, it changes every year. It's probably about 2,500 students that attend those schools on Kadena. And so that's our main focus. We have Cadence Ministries here working on different Marine bases, reaching out to different schools as well. But these are the schools that I focus on. And so a lot of times people ask, well, what do you actually do every day or every week? And it really does vary. I do have kind of a weekly rhythm pre-COVID, but I'll share with you a little bit about what does a typical week look like here. Because we have such a wide range of students that I shared about, ranging from really church students that are walking with the Lord, growing in their relationship, all the way to students that are openly saying, no, I'm not a Christian, not really interested in that, but I like the community here. And so as we've sat down this past year, really just prayed through a lot of how can we reach this community? How can we help students continue to grow and deepen their faith? And how can we share the gospel with students that don't yet know? How can we spur them on? How can we encourage them in the gospel? And so we have 3 main things we do throughout the week. Our first, what I call entry point into our ministry, is called Encounter. And it is a weekly cafe time. We have a building on base within walking distance from the schools. And so on Tuesday afternoons, we open up our building. We have a cafe set up. None of the students like coffee, so we do a lot of mixed slushy drinks. But students come into our building, and for the first hour, it's highly relational. Kids hang out. They kind of unwind from their school day. They can order a drink. As we make drinks, we ask students their names, so we get to know their names. We have a question jar, and so in order for a student to get their drink from us, they have to draw a question out and answer it. And that has been really eye-opening. Several weeks ago now, I guess, it's been March, the last time we were able to actually meet in person. We had a student draw a question, and the question was, who's your favorite Bible character? And she was real honest. She was very polite, very respectful, but just honestly said, I don't have a favorite Bible character. And I said, oh, really? Do you have a favorite story or anything you've ever heard in the Bible? And she just said, no, I don't believe in God, and I don't read the Bible. And so my one of our other adults that were there jumped in and just asked, well, what do you believe? And her answer was, oh, I believe in science. And so it sparked a really good conversation, and it gave us an opportunity to share why we believe in the Lord, why we're Christians, and it gave us a chance to hear why she believes in science. So it was a good entry point for her. And so that kind of maybe describes our encounter time a little bit. We've got students that know we're Christians. They know that it's a chapel program that they're walking into, and they're maybe interested. They like some things about our community, but they're definitely seeking different things spiritually. After about an hour of snack times, we gather for some kind of, I call it mandatory fun, but we do some kind of a group activity. We've got students that maybe attend one of the 3 schools. We've also got a number of homeschooled students that join us, and so sometimes there's not a lot of overlap in their week to see them, or just to build community amongst the students. And so we do something all together. That can range from a large group game, smaller table games. We try to do things that are creative, where they're spinning their wheels a little bit, problem solving. And then we also like to bring up just some social justice issues for discussion. We decided we wanted to capitalize on this time a little bit more in sharing the gospel. If we're only going to see these students once a week and it's the only Jesus they might get. And so one of the last weeks before we had to go on break, we actually made these bracelets out of paracord. They're kind of popular here, paracord, high-grade military type cord that they use for various things, but you can make these neat bracelets out of it. And so we spent some time crafting. Even the guys really enjoyed it. And then towards the end, when our bracelets were done, I shared the passage out of Ecclesiastes where it talks about a strand of three isn't easily broken. And the passage encourages us to think through who's around us, who's supporting us, what are your friends like? And so it's an opportunity to share biblical truths, biblical wisdom with students, and then just to encourage them that there's a friend that they can have in Jesus, that's going to be with them and endure with them and encourage them. And so it was a neat opportunity to share the gospel, just about who Christ is with them. And so we look forward to more of that when we're able to regather again, of just taking opportunities to share biblical truth with those students. So that's every Tuesday afternoon. On Sundays, we run a youth group, pretty similar to what Eaglebrook does. What I remember Eaglebrook doing when I got to be a part of that for a bit. We've got a middle school group that meets from 3 to 5 and a high school group that meets from 6 to 8. And it's fun. It's one of those groups that students can come in not knowing the Lord and feel welcomed, hear biblical teaching, engage in small group conversations. It's a group that kids that already know Jesus can come and deepen their faith, have opportunities to engage in spiritual conversations. And then students that are really solid walking with the Lord definitely have opportunities to reach out to their non-believing friends, to be leaders in our ministry. And so during youth group, we like to start out with some kind of a group activity, get everybody connecting. We always do some kind of a teaching time, different series. As of late, we had gone through the book of Jonah. We've gone through different books of the Bible. We talked about what it meant to be a disciple a couple months ago. And we always break into small groups. We've got some volunteers that work with us that allow us to be able to break off into smaller groups for further discussion. And then we like to close in worship. And so excited to kind of continue to build our worship team in the coming year. Something we're really excited about. Students are excited about jumping into that. And so our youth group gathers every Sunday, and just a really fun time. Our hope is that some of the Encounter students will come on Tuesday, enjoy the environment and be intrigued about what we're about, and that they would choose to come on Sunday to hear further biblical teaching, is our hope. That's how we've got that set up. And then once a month we do a deeper dive Bible study, and that's geared really for students that say, you know what, I know the Lord, I want to go deeper in my own knowledge. I want to love God more. I want to know more. And so once a month, we gather together. We give students reading plans, and so they're reading throughout the month, and then we gather together to talk through what they've read, questions they've had, things they've discovered, things they've been encouraged by, and we just go deep. There's not a lot of fun and games with that. We just enjoy going deep into the scriptures. And one of our goals with our volunteer staff is that those students that are coming to Deeper Dive, that we would meet with them outside of Deeper Dive sometime throughout the month, that we'd connect with them over coffee, over ice cream, whenever we can, that we would grab some extra time with them, and just continue to disciple them as they grow deeper in their faith. Also, once a month, I gather with my volunteer team, and we spend some time doing training. As they want to grow in leading students to the Lord, we spend some time talking through effective small groups and how do we teach and how do we lead these things and how do we encourage students. And that's been probably a highlight for me. I really enjoy that equipping part of ministry, and getting to train up more youth leaders to do ministry. And I've got 2 volunteers, a husband and a wife, that are currently in the process of moving. They will be heading to a new base in August, and so it's really fun to get to really build them up now and encourage them and equip them and send them off to a new base. And hopefully they can get involved in some kind of a ministry there and continue working with military students. During the school year, this past year, we were given the opportunity by one of the middle school principals to be at their school every week for lunch. And so every Wednesday we'd show up at the school and get to see a lot of our regular students that attend that school. I like going to school lunches and getting to see students in their natural habitat, getting to see who they sit with, what's their lunchtime conversation like, how is their day going, are they having good weeks, are they having rough weeks, and that really can help me think through what are we teaching, as I'm hearing conversations around the table, what's the topic? What's the main topics of discussion? How can we be helping students? How can we be helping them grow in their faith, solidify that more? Are there conversations going on that we just can address from a biblical perspective when we're at youth group? And so really, I'm encouraged by the school lunches. It's one of those little things that sometimes doesn't feel like a big deal to me, but it communicates a lot. Just showing up at the school lunch, it seems like I'm just showing up here. I'm not teaching anything, I'm just present. But students really do feel loved and cared for. Several weeks ago, I was out and about, and I bumped into a lady that works at the school, and she came running up to me, and she said, I just have to tell you something. I thought of you this past week, and I don't know this person very well, and so I was kind of thinking, well, I wonder why she thought of me. And she said, I've been working on some school. She's pursuing some teaching some teaching credentials, and she said one of my papers this week had to do with community involvement in the schools, and I had to answer the question of, does my community care about our school? And she said, as I started thinking about it, I thought of you, and I thought how you come to the school every week, how you have a real job, a different job, you're working with students outside of the school, but yet you take time during your week to enter our school and to be involved in what students are doing. And I was just really encouraged by that, she said. And so it's gone noticed that we care about students by simply being in their world, by taking a moment to enter into their community. And so so that was a fun encouragement for me. And so that's kind of what ministry looks like on a normal basis here each week. Typically, we are meeting in person, kind of continuing like normal during the summer, with the exception of the school lunch. Typically, summers here are full of some beach days, just some highly relational ministry. But as you know, COVID has kind of put a damper on some of those things. We've still been able to meet. We've utilized Zoom a lot. So we've continued to meet for Bible study and youth group virtually. And so just a little COVID update here on island. We started having some cases and just COVID being on our radar back in January. Okinawa is a big tourist destination, primarily a lot of Chinese folks, a lot of people from Taiwan as well come to vacation here. And like I said, it's about an hour flight from Taiwan, so we're really close. And so we'd started hearing, COVID rumblings back in January, February. There was this ship that was docked up in Japan for a while with a lot of COVID cases, and it had come from here. So it left Okinawa and then got up to Tokyo, and that's where it began its quarantine. And so that caused a little bit of alarm. We had a few cases pop kind of in February because of that, but really it stayed pretty low here. No cases really off base or on base. In mid-March, we started to see some increases in cases, and that's when our military leadership began putting down some restrictions for greetings or gathering times. Our schools went virtual back in March, and that's about the same time we as a ministry went virtual. And so initially we thought it'd be pretty short, maybe shortly after spring break, mid-April, we were hoping to regather in person. And so during that time, I just kind of made up my project list, began working on a few things, reading some stuff, and it wasn't too much of a hassle. I really did think that it would be pretty short-lived. I kind of treated it as just an extended winter break, and then quickly realized that wasn't the case. And so our students here never returned to in-person schooling. They remained doing virtual schooling through early June. We went on kind of some stricter restrictions and lockdowns in terms of just what we were able to do, both on and off base here. By the end of March through April and into May, early June, we started to see some of those restrictions lift as the number of cases on island really had gone down. And so we were able to start regathering in mid to late June. We were able to get together a few times in person with our students. And then just this last week, maybe you've seen it on the news, Okinawa made headlines this week in the national news. We've started to have some cases just peak amongst our military personnel. And so that has resulted in some return to restrictions. And so we're kind of in round 2 of our lockdown stuff right now. Really trying to limit our footprint off base so that way we keep our local host nation folks healthy. Okinawa has one of the highest populations of people over 100, so it definitely is an elderly population, and so wanting to keep them safe. Right now is just a real transit time for our military community, so we've got folks flying in from the States that are being relocated here, and so that has brought in some new cases that they're trying to just get under control here. But for the most part, I think Okinawa has weathered COVID fairly well, and we look forward to being off of restrictions, being able to gather in person again, being able to just be out and about a little bit more than we are right now. So that's kind of been the COVID update. Switching gears here in the time that I have left, I wanted just to share a few verses, some encouragement for you during this season. I think chances are, if you're anything like me, you've probably been all over the map, just emotion-wise, feeling-wise, as we've navigated this. Like I said before, when this started to hit, really felt like kind of a welcome break of the ordinary, getting to take a moment, have a little extra time at home to work on some projects, to get to read a little bit more. And then when I realized this wasn't just a short-term thing, it was going to be more long-term, really felt overwhelmed at times, felt discouraged at times, felt just unsure. I would do some research and some planning only to find out that wasn't going to work, or that more guidance had come down for restrictions. And so really just trying to feel like, where do I go? What do I do? And at times feeling kind of that brain fog of, I don't really know what to think, where to go. And then at times just feeling discouraged. Are we ever going to meet in person? I didn't move all the way to Japan just to share the gospel over Zoom. I want to be with people. You know, the Cadence mission is to share the gospel and our lives with the military community. And so how do you share your life when you're confined to your home? And so kind of all over the map there. And definitely some feelings of weariness at times, I think especially more so as we started to have some more freedoms come back in June, and now here it is July, and we're kind of back where we started with some restrictions. And so ready to return to normal. You know, school in the fall is getting closer, and so there's this hope, I think, that things will kind of normalize. No guarantees with that, but wanted to share 2 passages with you today that I've gone back to a few times during this season, and my guess is my feelings aren't unique. I've talked to other folks that have been all over the map with discouragement and weariness and confusion and just those things. And so one verse that I always go to when I'm kind of feeling just at a loss for things is in Psalm. And the psalmist writes, "Why are you downcast, O my soul?" This is from Psalm 43. "Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God." And I love how the psalmist writes, kind of talking to himself. It's kind of like head talking to the heart of, "Heart, why are you so downcast?" And I know it's easy sometimes to let our emotions control our thinking, to let our emotions kind of dictate truth, but that's just not the way it should be. And so I like this reminder of the head telling the heart that we need to hope in God, that yes, your feelings are valid, your feelings are real, it's okay to feel discouraged, but that can't dictate the truth. We need to put our hope in God. And you might be thinking, well, what good is that? Why should we hope in God? What good is hope? And I'm going to be looking at in Romans 5. Let me find it here. I'm going to read the first couple verses out of Romans 5. And I hope these verses are an encouragement to you. My guess is they're not new verses to you, but they've been an incredible encouragement to me during this time. So my prayer is that it would be an encouragement to you. Romans 5:1-5 says, "Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. And we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God." I like those verses. Lots of great things to rejoice in. We can rejoice because we've been justified. We can rejoice because we have peace with God. We can rejoice because we have access to God by faith, and that we can stand in grace. All great truths to remember, all great things to rejoice in. Easy things to rejoice in. It is easy to rejoice in being justified. It is easy to rejoice that we can have peace with God. But Paul doesn't stop there. He continues to write. He says, not only so not only can we rejoice in those things, but he goes on to say, but we also rejoice in sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit, whom he has given us. And so I don't know about you, but I have an easy time rejoicing in those first things he listed out. I rejoice in being justified. I rejoice in our salvation. I rejoice that we have direct access to God. I rejoice in those things. But when he says to rejoice in our sufferings, I don't know about you, but that's typically not my first response when things are tough. Just going out on a limb here, I'm guessing that a typical response for folks when they're suffering or just going through hard times could be things like sleeping it off, taking a good long nap, binging on a new series of Netflix, just kind of avoiding the world. I'm just going to veg out. Sometimes we see people quit. They don't want to persevere. They just quit what they're doing. Seek anything that might ease the pain. Might be ignoring it, becoming angry, becoming bitter. I think those would be more typical responses that we see in the midst of suffering, and probably not only responses that we see in others, but things that we see in ourselves when we're in tough times. But Paul goes on to tell us why we can rejoice in these things. He doesn't just say, just rejoice in your sufferings, but he tells us why. Why can we rejoice in our sufferings? And it's because suffering produces perseverance. It makes us stronger. It allows us to do things longer. Just like runners that train and persevere, they can go longer. They can go harder. So persevering makes us stronger. It shapes our character. It helps us to become more Christ-like. And so when we're up against these things that are hard, and really we could choose to not handle them well, God can help us to become more like him. You know, we think of the way Jesus entered into hard things. He still chose to do them. You know, he sought the Father, he prayed, he got away and talked to the Father, but he leaned in to hard things. And so those things shape our character too. And so as things make us stronger, it helps us to become more Christ-like. It leads to us being hopeful. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is right here. It just says, and hope does not disappoint. He doesn't say it shouldn't disappoint us. It probably won't. You should still end up with a decent Yelp rating, you know. He writes, no, it simply and clearly, hope does not disappoint. And so what encourages me, and what I hope encourages you, is as we rejoice in our sufferings, leaning into our sufferings and allowing God to use this time to shape us, to refine us, to encourage us, build our character. There's purpose in that. It's not just in vain. I usually can do anything if I know the reason for it. If I know there's a cause, I might start doing something, well, this seems a little silly. Why am I racking my brain, or why am I spending time doing this? And once I understand that why behind it, I'm usually all in for a project. And so as I was thinking about this season of just feeling at times like, what a lost season. We've had 3 or 4 months of just kind of hard, challenging weary times of what's the point. It just feels almost like a waste at times. I can't get out and do what I normally do. I feel limited in so many ways. But as I've sat down at times throughout this season, I've just asked the Lord, what are you doing during this time? What are you shaping in me? What are you revealing in me? What are you refining in me? How are you growing me to be more like you? And so some of those things that the Lord has revealed are, I really like to be in control of my schedule. I'm a planner, and I like to sit down and plot out things, and I like to be able to see those things through. And so some of the things that have come up, or some of the conversations I've had with the Lord have been, do you trust me with your calendar? You know, the Lord saying, do you trust that I can work things out in this timing, that you don't have to be a part of that, but that it can be my timing. It's showed me like how I spend my time. A lot of times we think we're super busy with different things, and then we start to peel some of those things away, and I realize, am I utilizing my time the best I can? Am I doing things that are worthy of my time? And so I hope that that's an encouragement to you, or just a challenge to sit down and think through, like, Lord, what are you doing in this season? That it's not a lost season. It's not just a void season, but that through suffering, through challenge, through tough times, God really can draw us closer to Himself. He can use those things to draw us closer to Himself, to refine us, to grow us more into His character. And so that's been my hope as I've kind of stepped out of the fog of all of this and have been able to look into it. It's been my hope and prayer that this season wouldn't just feel like a waste, but that God would be using it to draw me closer to Himself, and just reveal the things in my heart that need to be refined, that there's purpose, that we can go through tough times with purpose, and that we can do that confidently, knowing that hope doesn't disappoint. Hope does not disappoint. And so as we put our hope in God, we won't be disappointed. That there's a real now to that, and not yet of right now. We won't be disappointed as we pursue the Lord, but there's also that eternal, just that perseverance, that eternal perseverance of continuing to run this race that's been marked out for us. That we won't be disappointed. The more that we pursue and seek the Lord, that's good. That's worthy of our time, even in the midst of a pandemic, even when things don't go our way. God is using tough things to grow us more into His character. And so, Eaglebrook, I hope that that's encouraging. I hope that you're doing well, enduring and persevering during this season. Really do look forward to hopefully getting to see you all in person next summer. Really, really am grateful for you all. I'm grateful for your partnership in the ministry here and the gospel being spread to students. And so a couple things I'll just leave for prayer points. Just continue to pray here that we'd have opportunities to connect with students, whether that be virtually or in person. And then just continued wisdom of, we have so many students that come through our doors that aren't believers yet. And just looking for opportunities to share the gospel with them, that they would begin relationship with Christ. And then just for the summer, we have so many students that move in and out. Wisdom as we kick off the new year, and how best to reach and encourage students, how to get new students plugged in so they've got biblical community and feel connected, but also just understanding where students are spiritually, so that way we can really encourage them and see them grow in their faith. So thanks, Eaglebrook. Excited to see what God continues to do in and through you during this season and in the coming months, and really do look forward to being with you again. Thanks, and God bless.